I talked to a lot of people that had the last time they purchased, oh, nobody told me this, that, or the other thing. Because I did a couple polls asking people, like, what are some of the things that everybody wants to know that nobody's answering? And there was a lot of common things. Like, nobody apparently knew that no lender had ever told them that once they start the loan process, they can't take out a credit card or make any large purchases. They just didn't know. So a lot of them did, not knowing until afterwards that they shouldn't do it, stuff like that.
Okay, lenders out there, we're doing a terrible job, obviously, if they don't know not to go open up credit cards and buy cars or get your new washer and dryer right before you close.
I think that was one of the biggest things that I had gotten. That was like the most popular comment that people hadn't known.
Do people still think you have to put 20% down to buy a house too?
I didn't get that one a lot.
We still get that.
Do you?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast, where nothing is off limits. If you're interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate, and you want to learn some of the insider secrets and uncensored truths from the true professionals in and around real estate, you've come to the right place. Now, let's buckle up for the uncensored truth about real estate and join your host, Brian Cardenas.
All right, everybody, welcome to the next episode of the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast, where nothing is off limits. If you guys are watching us on YouTube, please make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you find out when we drop our next episode. And if you are listening on your favorite podcast platform, we would appreciate it if you give us a 5-star rating. And please share it out to your friends, family, anybody that you think might benefit from all the fun stuff that we have to talk about here today. And we have a very special guest here to the new studio digs, Marissa Lisky with eXp Realty. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
She's nervous.
I'm very nervous.
We will survive.
I know.
So tell me a little bit about your background. How did you end up in real estate? It's always a curious question I have.
So I had a business for about 10, 11 years selling vintage, and I needed to make a switch. I needed to do something. Well, COVID happened, and first being trapped in the house with an strictly at-home business got very mentally exhausting. So I needed to make a switch for financial reasons, really, too. And so I've always been interested in real estate and decided, you know what, now's as good a time as any. So I went for it.
And you still are into the vintage stuff, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
What was your latest project?
Okay, so I redid a horse trailer to use for events. So the first event I took it to was a vintage market, and I sold some of my old vintage. But really, it's just kind of to bring to different farmers markets, events, open houses, do little play dates in the park and stuff like that. We did an outdoor movie with it.
That's cool.
A couple days ago. Yeah.
Are you serving drinks out of it yet?
Depends on what kind of drinks, not cocktails. Last time at the movie, we served popcorn, soda, and cookies.
Got to get another license for that one, huh?
I think so, yeah.
But how do you incorporate like your love of vintage into real estate then? I mean, I can see the transition to real estate from that, but do you still bring that into what you do with real estate?
You know, when I first started, I really didn't. When I first started, it seemed, I had never been in this industry, a professional industry where I felt like, ooh, I've got to have a blazer. I have to have my hair done at all times. I had never been in an industry like that. So when I first got into it, I thought, okay, I got to fit this mold. I've got to get some blazers, which I did.
Did you have a gold blazer?
Not a gold one. Okay. I think I have white, black, and I think I do have like a funky one that I never actually really wore. But so I tried doing that, and it just felt it just didn't feel right, it felt phony.
Yeah.
So very slowly, now is my 3rd year in real estate. So slowly, about last year, I realized, okay, the knowledge is here, the skills here, my experience is here. I need to start being myself. And so that's kind of when I started pulling out just, the real me, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going back to all the things I love.
There's not a lot of blazers and suits and all that kind of stuff in real estate anymore. Like that's probably the perception that a lot of us had way back when.
Yeah.
But it's not that way. I mean, people appreciate you being real and being yourself, don't
That's true. The first time I went to an open house, just checking stuff out. I didn't have clients at the time, but I walked in and there was this, gorgeous little realtor, and she was wearing just jeans and a t-shirt. And I thought, okay.
You might be able to hang, huh?
This is fine. I think I can, yeah. I think I can bust out my jean jacket.
Well, that's cool though, because that's an important piece, I think, for a lot of people is to find somebody that they can connect with. Because like choosing who you work with in real estate is more than just like looking at a statistic or looking at a profile picture. It's getting to know for you, the client, and making sure that it's a good fit. But the client also has to have that good feeling about you too.
Yeah, and it took me a little while to really realize that because fresh out of real estate school, they tell you all these things, all these guides of basically how you need to run your business and what you need to do to be successful. But nobody really tells you, I mean, they tell you know, like, and trust, but they tell you so many things that are anti know, like, and trust because no one is saying, like, really be yourself. And
Right.
that's the most important part, and it's kind of just goes along with the whole social media thing. If you're going to be doing your social media, you have to be yourself.
Yeah.
So, and it's a struggle when you first start.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if that old adage, where they say those who can't do teach.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you're being taught by people that do have that old school mentality and mindset of
Right.
how the business needs to run, because everything even 3 years ago was door knock, cold call, mailers. That's how you're going to be successful. That's how you have to do it. But there's so many other things to it. Like I build based off of community and my social media platforms.
So what's some of the other stuff? Because that is a huge piece of what you do is your community and all your other peripheral activities. Like, tell us more about the different things that you do.
So when I first started, I tried all the things that they advise you to do. I tried the cold calling, I tried the door knocking. None of that fit. It was very just uncomfortable.
But it's so fun. How could you not like it?
I mean, I'm like sweating doing this podcast. I'm like uncomfortable. Like, could you imagine me making dozens and hundreds of like cold calls? And it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be awkward. No one's going to want to talk to me. So after I sifted through those real quick and realized no to all of these, that's when I decided to start building through community because that's what feels most comfortable to me and most natural. So I just leaned into what I know. I'm a mom. I am a small business owner. So I started a women's networking group. And it's I just basically based it off what I needed. I tried to do many different networking groups that have a lot of rules. They're really expensive. There's, you have to show up every week. You have to output a certain amount of referrals every week or month. Definitely no kids. You definitely have to look professional. Can't be late, all these rules. And so those just didn't fit. And then I tried doing mom groups, and a lot of moms run into this. They're very catty and cliquey. So it's not very welcoming. It's like you're the outsider and they may let you know you're the outsider and you're not coming in, So I just decided to start my own. That just exactly what I was feeling like I needed. I needed moms who understand that starting a business is one of the most vulnerable times of your life that nobody ever talks about or prepares you for. You just think, I'm starting a business, whether it's real estate or making jewelry or whatever it is, and they think it's, feeding my creative side, it's going to be fun, it's going to better my family, all these things. But what ends up happening is you really kind of lose a lot of friends. You start to lose a lot of family because they don't understand. And it's a common thread, like with all the women that I meet. And so when you're in that position and you're feeling that way, you want a mom's group, a women's group where you can go and I can show up like dressed in my pajamas with a nasty high bun that's been in my head for 2 days with a screaming toddler on my hip, probably wearing one shoe. I'm probably crying too. There's a lollipop stuck to my ass. And I just need to be able to walk in and be like, I'm here and I made it. And that is a win. And it should be, And so that's just the environment I created. So
well, I was kind of expecting you to show up here like that too. So like, I don't know where the sucker stuck to your ass went. I didn't inspect, but whatever.
I know. That's how I usually show up. Yes, very casual, but
I mean, I think clients appreciate that because they know they're getting a real person. And that's, I think, the misperception that a lot of consumers might have is there's so much that they don't understand about real estate, but they also don't necessarily understand how realtors work, who's going to be the best fit. So like if you were talking to a prospective client, maybe let's start with the buyer side of it. what are the things that they can ask? What should they be investigating or learning about to try to make the right choice of an agent to work with them?
Well, I think on either side, the buy side or the sell side, the number one important thing is you're going to be spending a lot of time with this person. Your communication should be comfortable and it should flow naturally, and you should feel like taken care of. You should feel like if I need to get a hold of my agent, they are going to respond and they're going to be here for me. It's not going to take me 2 days. It's not going to take me several texts, voicemails. I should be able to call, and for the most part, they pick up the phone or shoot me a text and say, hey, I'm in a meeting. I'll call you right back. I
Right.
think that's number one important on either side. But for buy side, that's a great question.
I'm here to stump you.
I know. Let me think. I think relationship is really key, but knowledge, market knowledge, of course, strong negotiation skills, strong communication skills. Yes, communicating with you, but this is the person representing you, so you want them to be able to speak to your cross agent, with respect, and also answering their phone calls. That's something I encounter a lot when I'm on the buy side, is when I'm calling listing agents, they're not answering. They're
Mhm.
not returning my calls. They're not responding to my emails.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's no wonder your house has been on the market for
Yeah.
78 days.
Well, a thing that's interesting is that, I think listing agents, they used to pick up the phone a lot more because, probably all through the previous decade prior to hitting 2020, like I would always reach out to the listing agent, and probably 70% of the time they'd pick up. I'd occasionally get a call back, like normal kind of interactions. And like once COVID hit and they got so busy, like they just stopped answering phones
Yeah.
completely. They were not returning any phone calls. Like we had to get creative on our end in trying to represent our buyers. And so I started doing a video talking about the buyer's qualifications. And so I would send that along, and I would still try to make a phone call. They wouldn't answer the
Mhm.
call, but at least by sending a video, I could get out some of the important points about the buyer's qualifications. And then now we've got back to a more normal market. I've seen agents answering the phone a little bit more, but I think some of them might have gotten in the habit of just, I don't need to do this anymore.
Yeah, it is. It's really hit or miss. Some are great with communication and some are just, some I don't even get a hold of, and we don't even go see that house. That's just it. We move on.
Yeah, and
You
they
know?
don't. I don't know how they can't put two and two together. Like if you're not receptive and not communicating
Yeah.
about the item that you have to sell, like there's going to be people that are going to be turned off by that.
Yeah.
And so, like for the buyers, I think that your point though is really important. Like the communication skills to me on the buyer side is really important, because if you're a good communicator and you can build rapport with people, and you're reaching out to listing agent before you're blindly presenting an offer, you can find out a lot of information,
Mhm.
can't you?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true too. Before you ever submit an offer, that's always number one. Your buyer agent, or your agent as a buyer, should be calling the listing agent and finding out what is most important to your sellers, because that's how you're going to gear your offer.
Yeah.
It might be time frame, it might be dollar amount, it might be all these different things, and that knowledge is power. And that's how you're going to frame your offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where the buyers can really make a lot of good decisions, is asking those kind of questions. Like, what is your strategy? Like, how do you go about, figuring out how do we write an offer? And I always think that, trusting your gut is important, because like if you ask an agent a question about what's going on in the market, or is this a good time to buy or whatever, and you hear the response that you get and the kind of questions and things that they say, like to me, you either get a gut feeling like this person knows what they're talking about or this person doesn't.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to trust it, don't you?
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing too is anytime you ask an agent, oh, how's the market, or what's the market look like? That is a really complicated question. It's always oversimplified on social media for these little reels of top 10 questions to ask, or, here's a breakdown of costs or whatever. But in reality, if somebody's asking me, how's the market? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. Are you looking for an investment? Are you looking to live somewhere? Are you looking for, fix and flip? Are you looking for a buy and hold? There's so many questions to ask, and that really kind of determines what the answer is of how is the market.
But that's a great question for a buyer to ask, because if they got an answer like that,
Yeah.
where you're asking all those questions back, to me, that says, okay, this is an agent that knows what they're doing, because there's not a right answer for everybody.
Yeah.
It depends is the right answer.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to dig deeper.
Yeah, most people will say to me, "Oh, is now a good time to buy?" Well, that's a very loaded question. Is now a good time to buy for you? Because now it's always a good time to buy. It's always a good time to sell, if it's right for you.
Yeah.
That's just the thing,
So I'm going to ask you the hard question.
Oh, no.
Is it a good time to buy a house right now? So, no, seriously, though, if somebody wants to live in a house and it's not just strictly for an investment, they're planning on being there for, 3 or 4 or 5 years or whatever, like, what do you think about where the market is at? Like,
I think that I think it's always a good time to buy. I think that I think a lot of it comes down to your financing and sending them to a lender that can get them, in the best position for purchasing right then. But I mean, the market, I think, didn't the interest rate just drop?
It depends on what time of day you actually ask that question.
And then May 10th, the new report's coming out. So what's going to happen then? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, it is dependent upon their situation, but I think, like what you said earlier, is it's real estate's a good investment if you're going to hold on to it.
Yeah.
Like, and that's why you're asking people a question, are you going to hold on to it? Are you going to flip it? Because, if somebody's thinking about flipping it and they're not a really experienced flippers and know their costs and everything, like, this is a crazy time to try to get into that. It's too volatile.
Yeah.
Prices they're starting to stabilize a little bit, but you don't exactly know for sure where it's going unless you can get a really screaming deal that you're going to make money on.
Yeah, and I just hate answering that as such a broad statement, because honestly, it really comes down to every individual situation. Some people are just not ready. Like, we can say, oh, renting is 100% interest, so you buy, but are you ready? And I hate getting into that, like, just totally broad, just blanket statement, because I feel like it's not suited for everybody. Like, there are some people, like my friends that are single moms. Yes, of course they desperately want to buy a house, but they can't. And a 2% interest, increase, that makes a huge difference. They don't have cash to purchase points down, buy the points down, or get into a product that is extra money up front, so that's kind of why I like asking more questions than just saying, like, yeah, it's a great time to buy, or, oh, of course, real estate's always a great investment. I mean, everybody kind of knows that. It really just, to me, comes down to the individual and what they can do.
Yeah. No, it's a very individualized answer to that question. It always kind of amuses me. I was talking to an agent last night, and she had a client that said, I think they just sold their house and they don't want to buy again. They want to, not ever, but they don't want to buy right now. They want to go and rent and wait for the market to go down dramatically. And, when you have somebody that's got their mind made up and they don't want to listen to facts and details, it's a bit of a challenge.
Yeah.
But, I think one of the stats that I just came across through MBS Highways, that out of the last 81 years, home values have gone up 73 out of the last 81 years. They've gone down 7 times and they were flat 1 year. So, in 5 of those 7 years were from 2008 to, 2012?
Yeah.
So, like, in that one bunched up time, obviously there was a massive, housing recession, unique thing that happened in history that's not happened before, probably not going to happen again. If you throw that out, then there's been 2 other years in 81 years where real estate's gone down. So, it doesn't mean that it's always the right thing, because if it goes up by 2% and you stay in it for 2 years, well, if it increased by 4%, you're not going to cover your cost of selling in that period of time. So it gets back to that same thing. Like, well, what's your plans? Like, are you going to be there long term?
Yeah.
What do we think the outlook is?
And if you're financially stable enough to be able to purchase and make the move, then yes, absolutely. Absolutely, I think you should. But, just depends on your financial situation, I think.
Yeah. So on the listing side of it, someone that's thinking about selling their house, like, what are some of the strategies and things that you think are good ideas for people to be thinking about, whether it's marketing, like staging, social media,
All of it. Marketing is huge. Staging is necessary as a necessary component of the marketing. Social media is a huge portion of that marketing, you know. So I think marketing is always what I lean strongly to on listings because that's what at the end of the day gets all eyes on your property and would drive hopefully multiple offers, driving the price up, which is, you know, the whole goal is to get top price, sell as quick as you can.
Yeah. So if you've got a seller trying to decide between an agent, or, you know, 2 or 3 agents trying to figure that out, like what are some of the things that they should be asking? Because saying, yeah, is marketing important? Yes. Okay, well, that's great. Like in more depth, like what should somebody be looking for from that listing agent? I mean, I know you do a lot on social media, and there's some agents that don't do anything. Like what kind of social media should they be doing? Like when you talk about staging, I don't know if a lot of consumers understand like what staging is all about. Like they understand you're putting furniture in a house, but like what is the cost for that? Or does a typical, you know, 2,000 square foot house, like what does that cost? Are they paying for it? Like, can you kind of go through that kind of stuff to help
So
people
I think
understand?
so every agent does it differently. Some pay for your staging, others require the seller to pay for the staging. I really typically try to get away with for the most part doing occupied stagings where my stager comes in, moves, you know, tells them what to pack, what they need to pack, what they need to take down, stuff like that. And then I'll bring in the smalls. So stuff to just make it neutral, but kind of, you know, on trend and appealing to as the mass of buyers. And we'll move out the furniture. And sometimes she'll bring some things in here and there. And for the most part, you can that will be good. That will, you know, look great in photos and stuff like that. Every once in a while, everything really needs to be kind of hauled over. Or a lot of times it's vacant. And so at that point, you know, you would have to do like a full staging. But every agent works differently. I always pay for my stagings on behalf of my sellers. And then professional photos, of course, but photos, video, drone, if the community is popular or has a lot of real great selling points, drone of the community, you know, stuff like that. So just kind of like doing as many things as you can possibly do geared towards that property and its location, and using all of that across different platforms. So of course, social media, Instagram, Facebook ad sometimes, YouTube always.
So that, I mean, that's key though for somebody to go look at the agent's social media presence because that's where so many eyes can get on it. And if you've got an agent that isn't doing much, you know, there's not a lot of connections out there. That's not necessarily a great sign.
And there's so much that can be done. You know, every property should have its own website. That way it can have its own QR code. So your seller can share that with their own community and you can go through that can be on print marketing.
You want to buy a house, but high interest rates have got you down? Take the rate challenge and send us a verifiable loan estimate from another lender, and we'll beat it and pay for your appraisal up to $600. Here at Give Mortgage, being powered by UMortgage allows us to provide you with unmatched speed and efficiency and the best rates and fees in the market, all while delivering you the concierge level service you deserve. We want you to have an experience getting a mortgage that you'll never forget, and not because you got put through a meat grinder to get it. At Give Mortgage, we give great advice, we give the best rates, and we give back to charity. Visit us at www.give-mortgage.com or call us at 480-331-4684 to schedule a free consultation to see how we can help.
All right, so now when you're talking about doing all of these things that you're talking about doing when it comes to like creating a single property website, to doing the social posts, to doing videos, to doing drones, does it matter what the price point is? Like, are you doing that for every price point?
Yeah, that should be done for all of your listings as a standard. I mean, I have a standard marketing list. I think it's like 138 points of things that I do for every listing. And that's how agents really need to run it, is just a set standard of your practices, no matter what price point.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I don't think everybody does that. Like,
yeah,
because you still see on the MLS, like, iPhone pictures and things like that.
I saw there was, you know, you can do virtual staging.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so there was some like big Suns game, and I found, I don't know, probably without exaggeration, probably like 25 listings that had the Suns colors and foam fingers like sitting on a couch.
Oh really?
Yeah, that they, yes. It was like a whole trend like for a week I saw.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the crazy thing. And that's what's so hard for consumers is because they think that they talk to a realtor, because a lot of people will get a referral from, a friend or family member. They
Right.
use somebody before, and then they just go with that person, and they don't know what the expectations are of what should happen. And so, if you were to give advice to somebody, like, should they just take that referral? Because I know referrals can be very valuable. Should they be hunting online? Like, what's a good way to find a person, and then should they talk to more than one?
I think you should always talk to more than one. I think if you have a trusted friend that had sold or purchased and you saw it kind of unfolding, as it was going on and you thought, "Oh, wow, I'm really impressed." Okay, well then maybe there's no need. But definitely, I mean, I'm a big social media person. I think you should always investigate on social media. That is essentially your agent's portfolio. So, are they educating? Are you seeing them working? Things like that. Because it's a great way just to see how they are in real life and what they're producing.
It's
So,
hard to see from social if that's their real life because, like, sometimes.
well, if they're actively working and
Sure.
they should be showing you, here's some listings, here's a video I did
Right.
for this listing, here's a link to this property address, for the single property website, things like that. So where
Yeah.
you can see their samples of what they're doing in real life.
Because ultimately, that's what most people are doing nowadays is they're going and doing some form of research to go and learn about who they're working with, whether they're Googling them or going on to Facebook or Instagram or whatever. So you as an agent have to kind of keep up that profile and show what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the resume now.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. That's your resume.
so with where people have misunderstandings, like, is there a common thing that you see from consumers that they don't really get about real estate that you wish they did, or you feel like, we could all do a better job at educating them on?
I think there's several things. I think one is a big mistake is just kind of taking whatever agent. They receive a flyer in the mail. Okay, this is perceived to be the agent of our community, so that's who I'm going to go with. I think there should be a lot more to that. They do need to interview multiple people and ask those questions because it is an interview and they should treat it as such and make sure this is a person you want to spend a lot of time with. This is a person you feel like you want going out into the world representing you on one of the largest transactions you're going to be doing, and make sure that they have that education that you make you feel educated. Like, yes, they might know a lot, but are they explaining it to you so that you feel like you now also know a lot? I mean, that's important,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that sometimes people have happen is that they get talked to in a way that is using a lot of industry
Mhm.
jargon and things like that, and it's like goes right over their head. And I know for me, like, if that happens to me, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be made to feel stupid
Yeah.
by somebody talking over my head. And if somebody's doing that to you, like, that's
Yeah.
probably not a good.
Yeah, and sometimes it's hard as a realtor because you go through these things every day. Sometimes it's a little hard to remember what people don't know when you're so used to seeing it all the time and you're just in that world. And so I think that people need to feel that comfort to say, "Well, hold on, wait, what was that?" Because I get a lot of, "Okay, I don't want to waste your time," or, "Oh, sorry to call you again," or, "Oh, this is a stupid question." It's not a stupid question. You shouldn't feel bad about calling me. You should ask me anything and everything you feel like you don't know and want to know, you know?
Yeah. Well, people are afraid to go out and ask a lot of things because they think they should know it. And that's the whole point of this podcast is, like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that people don't understand about real estate, and there's no point in feeling like it's a stupid question because honestly, prior to 2020, there was a lot of things we saw in 2020 that did not exist before, like
Yeah.
waiving appraisal
Mhm.
contingencies. Like, nobody did that. I've been doing this a long time. Nobody did that. And then all of a sudden, thing came out where, oh, we're doing this all the time. Like prior to that, no one was waiving inspections.
Yeah.
That stuff happened, and then so there's constantly change that happens in the industry. So if you're a consumer and you do this once every 7 years,
Yeah.
there's no way anybody should expect that you know everything about what's going on.
Yeah.
Like that's the job of the agent and the lender to educate you and keep you up to date on what's happening in the market.
Yeah. I talked to a lot of people that had the last time they purchased, oh, nobody told me this, that, or the other thing. Because I did a couple polls asking people, like, what are some of the things that everybody wants to know that nobody's answering? And there was a lot of common things. Like nobody apparently knew that, no lender had ever told them that once they start the loan process, they can't take out a credit card or make any large purchases. They just didn't know. So a lot of them did, not knowing until afterwards that they shouldn't do it, stuff like that.
Okay, lenders out there, we're doing a terrible job, obviously, if they don't know not to go open up credit cards and buy cars or get your new washer and dryer right before you close.
I think that was one of the biggest things that I had gotten. That was like the most popular comment that people hadn't known.
Do people still think you have to put 20% down to buy a house too?
I didn't get that one a lot.
We still get that.
Do you?
Yeah.
I put that out a lot on my social media, though. That's a misconception.
So you're doing the job for all of us that we should be doing.
I'm trying.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Well, it's like, I can only think of so many things. So.
Well, that's one that we hear. There's another one that I hear pretty frequently that people think you have to be on the job for 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
Before you can buy a house.
Yeah.
That's just not true. Like it depends on the situation, and I could probably name off all the different ways you could do it otherwise, which we won't take the time to do that. But that's an assumption that people have that sometimes stops them before they even inquire. And it's not true. Like it might be, but it's probably not true.
And another one that I just thought of is people look at FHA and think, ooh, for some reason, everybody thinks, oh no, FHA, I don't want to, no, I can't do it now if I have to do FHA. I'll just wait till I can qualify for conventional, wait till I have the money down for conventional.
So you see that from the consumers act that way?
Yes.
Really?
Yep, that's another one.
Wow. Why do you think that is?
I don't know if it stemmed from a couple years ago when FHA seemed to be a little harder to get in. Well, not a little harder. FHA was harder to get your buyers into a property because they didn't have as much cash down and all the other things. So I don't know if it stems from that or if there's maybe some old misconception before that. I don't know.
That's an interesting one. I did have a couple people recently ask that question, or actually one person who's qualified and they're out shopping, and we kind of a unique situation, but they were going to be putting like 15% down, but we recommended that they go FHA, and mostly because credit scores weren't super high. They weren't bad, but they weren't super high, and so the interest rate on a conventional loan was considerably higher than FHA, and there was still mortgage insurance on there, so their payments actually were about the same as on a conventional loan, but their the debt to income ratio, which is basically how much of your income are you spending on all your debt payments, that's how we figure out how much somebody's qualified for. FHA allows people to go a lot higher, like to 56.99%, whereas in conventional you got to be below 50. So in their particular case, they would have had to pay off probably $15,000 or $20,000 of debts to be able to go conventional. And what they were going to be rewarded with was almost an identical payment as FHA, which, I mean, $1 difference, I think it was. So I asked her, I said, well, is there a reason why you're trying to get into a conventional loan as opposed to just going with the FHA? And she said, well, I've just heard that, it's harder to get accepted offers on an FHA. I said, okay, well, I'm glad you said that, because you're trying to wedge yourself into something that's going to cost you a bunch more money based on an assumption that is probably propagated by realtors. Maybe it's by consumers, and it's based on a bad interpretation of a situation. Because in that particular case, a lot of what you're referring to in like 2020 and 2021 in terms of having a hard time getting FHA offers accepted, that was a real thing, definitely a real thing. But it stemmed from the fact that most of the time it was that in addition to not having a lot down, we'd have an easier time getting a conventional 3% loan accepted than we would 3.5% down FHA loan. And it was because of the appraisals. In an FHA loan, the seller has to basically allow you to get out of the transaction if the appraisal came in low. And prices were escalating so quickly that that was a real issue. That's why people were waiving that appraisal contingency. But on FHA, you can't waive it. Like, you can do it in the contract, but it's not enforceable because FHA is protecting consumers that way. So that's why people had a hard time getting those accepted. Well, in her case, she wasn't putting 3.5% down. She was putting 15% down. So what I relayed to the agent is, listen, if you have a listing agent that has any question or concern about, like, we should bring it up first. Don't let them bring it up. And just explain, hey, listen, this is an FHA offer, but it's not like your typical FHA. They're putting 15% down. It just so happens that it's a better deal for them financially to go this route. And if you have any concerns about an appraisal coming in low, number one, we should deal with that first. But secondly, it wouldn't matter for their financing, because if that appraisal came in low and they wanted to technically put 5% down and pay cash for the difference, they could still do that and it wouldn't affect their loan in the slightest. So it's those kind of things where people think it's a bad thing to do FHA, but in most cases it's not. Like, you got to talk through and ask, those kind of questions. So I babbled on long enough there.
Oh, well, I mean, I think people need to know.
Yeah. And it's just those kinds of misunderstandings that people have that, why is it worse to go FHA?
And it's not now in our current market, it's not harder to get an FHA loan accepted like it was. Now, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I just didn't even mention. Is like, it's not a problem right now.
Yeah.
And if it was, here's why it shouldn't be.
Well, and the FHA just reduced their mortgage insurance.
Correct.
So, I mean, there's a lot of bonuses.
Yeah.
A lot of plus sides to doing FHA.
And we're actually recommending that people do FHA right now. Like, we'll show them both, but one of the things that kind of calms people's concerns a little bit is, people don't know what's happening with the housing market. We can tell them all the data. We can tell them what we think is going to happen, but we don't have a guarantee of what's going to happen. So you have to kind of plan for the worst and hope for the best. With a conventional loan, let's just say home prices went down 5%, in the next year. But let's also say interest rates came down by 1.5%. Both of those things are possible. So what a lot of people are banking on is, I'll go and refinance into that lower interest rate, because rates are a little high right now. Well, if you're in a conventional loan and you've only put like 5% down and the home value went down by 5%, guess what? Unless the government comes out with a new program, you're not going to be able to refinance because you don't have any equity. So if you look at that and then you look at it with an FHA side by side, that lower mortgage insurance rate on an FHA that you brought up, that makes it more competitive. The interest rate's probably lower on an FHA than on a conventional. So payment scenarios are usually pretty close these days. But what FHA has that conventional loans doesn't have is the ability to do a streamlined refinance. Doesn't matter what the home value is. So if rates did go down and home values went down and you were in an FHA, you could still refinance and get that lower rate. You might be locked out if you were in a conventional loan. So
that should be your video right there.
It's going to be one. I've talked about that a few times. No, but that's the thing. Like, there's another misunderstanding that people have about it when they don't ask the questions either of their real estate agent or their loan officer to find out, hey, there might be a really good reason why I should do this plan versus that plan.
And I think that that's a sign that you are in good hands with your realtor or your lender if they're explaining these things to you. If they're just taking your information and not giving you any information back, I don't think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
There should be your agent, your lender should be asking you questions. They should be explaining, okay, well, you're talking about doing this, but have you thought about this?
Right.
Or why are you so set on this? And if no one's asking you anything or giving you feedback, I don't think that's a great sign.
Yeah. And that's
you're missing something somewhere.
Like and I'm sure you probably do this, like when you're first talking to a buyer, you're having a full consultation with them, right? Before you're taking them out and running them around to go show them properties, aren't you?
Yeah. I have an online form that they fill out. Some people like it, some people don't. So if they don't want to fill the online form out, we have a very lengthy conversation. Yeah.
And that's critical because all those questions you brought up before, that's where you've got to ask those things, both you of the buyers, but also the buyers of the agent.
Yeah. And I try to cover most common questions. Do I cover it all? Probably not, because everybody has their own, thoughts and their own ideas. But I try to cover the most commonly asked questions, or things that when I was a first-time home buyer, what did I want to know that I had no idea of, just kind of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that's the opportunity that both of you have, is to ask all those questions, get it out in the air, make sure you feel like you're being empowered and educated, like you mentioned, to make good decisions.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what we're trying to do, is help people make the right decisions.
Yeah. And that is, I think, something that we should bring up too, is once you interview multiple people and you pick the team you trust the most, you really need to take the advice of your team.
What a concept. I'm glad you said that.
Because that is the other thing that I have been running into lately. Price points, things like that, where people want to price really high and think that they're magically going to get that number, but it works against them. It does not work in their favor. So, once you pick a team you trust and they're advising you on anything like price points or staging or marketing, open houses or showings or anything, or lending, listen to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And some people don't.
Yeah.
They kind of have their mind made up about some things. And I think that's really, really important, because that's where you need to do that vetting, to your point, is figure out, is this somebody that sounds like they know what they're talking about?
Yeah.
Have I done enough questions of them? Have I checked their references? Have I looked around? And then once you decide, then listen.
Yeah.
I mean, you see listings all the time, and I talk to people all the time where, yeah, the listing is, $60,000 higher than it should be. But that's a strategy that some listing agents do, is they'll tell you what you want to hear.
Yes, I know.
To get the listing,
Mm-hmm.
rather than tell you what you need to hear.
And if you're hearing things like, well, let's go ahead and price it high and we'll just list it for a couple weeks and see what happens, that's not a good strategy. That's no strategy. That's not a strategy.
That's the hope strategy.
That is the opposite of a strategy. That is stigmatizing your property.
Yeah. No. There's so many different things that I think people can be more aware of, and I think that is one of them, is understanding what those different strategies are. If you had to, kind of sum it up into like one broad piece of advice for people, what would you give to somebody, whether they're buying or selling, like to make sure that they're making sound decisions?
I think definitely investigate, do your due diligence and investigate. Anything important to you, make sure is important to the person you're going to be choosing to work with as well.
That's good. That's aligning your interest with the person that's representing your interest.
Yes.
That's awesome. So if somebody thinks that, hey, maybe Marissa is somebody that aligns with my interest, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Instagram at Marissa Lisky, or my website, marissasellsaz.com.
How do you spell Lisky?
Lisky.
Okay, important. I've done it back and forth many times until I figured it out. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't get to you. Because in my brain, it was an I at the end, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm going to double check this before I send it to you.
Marissa Lisky.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Hopefully this wasn't as torturous as you felt like it was going to be in the beginning.
It wasn't. It was fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming here, and thank you guys for joining us again. Make sure that you hit that notification button and subscribe on YouTube, and make sure you also give us a like on your favorite podcast platform, and we will see you guys again next week on the next episode of the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Take care.
Thanks for joining us, and please remember to go and subscribe, like, share, all that cool stuff to help us grow, and come back to listen to our next episode. Until then, go out and live life uncensored.
Thanks for listening to the Uncensored Real Estate Podcast. Don't forget to help us out and subscribe. Follow and give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. And check us out on YouTube for the full video podcast. If you want more information on any of the topics discussed on today's episode, email us at uncensoredrealestatepodcast@gmail.com or give the Cardenas Mortgage team a call at 480-331-4684.